Alright, so postural exercises. So the first two I'm going to do are going to be there are two wall breathing exercises. So the first one is going to be with your elbows back, the second one is going to be with your shoulders and your arms up in the air. So the first one is kind of for everyone can do the first one. The second one, if you've got very rounded shoulders, you may not be able to do it because you'll be kind of in this position, it's too uncomfortable, and you'll be putting pressure on areas like the front of your shoulder, which I don't want you to be feeling. So this is how it works. So there's going to be 3 cues that I'm going to do in most of these exercises that I want you to get kind of used to doing. So the first one is going to be squeezing the shoulder blades back. So if you're on the wall like this, we're going to get the elbows flat against the wall. And so the first cue is going to be squeeze the shoulder blades back as much as you can. The second cue is take a big deep breath through your chest. So squeeze the shoulder blades back. First cue, second cue, big deep breath through your chest. And then the third cue is going to be a posterior tilt of the pelvis. Now how does this look? So in this position you can see that I've got a big gap here. If I take my arms off the wall like that, you can see there's a big gap. I can pass my hand through for my lower back. So I need to flatten that gap to create a good neutral spine. So it's going to look like this, so shoulder blades back, big deep breath through the chest, and then posteriorly tilt the pelvis to get your back flat against the wall. Okay, so I can tell you now, you might be able to hear the wobble in my voice, that this is actually quite difficult to do. And then once you've got this as flat as you can against the wall, and I'm struggling a little bit here, but then you're going to be, again, this time have 5 deep breaths through your chest. So and you can do maybe 5 to 10 of those, and I can assure you, if you're getting that shoulder blade squeezed back with that posterior tilt, so we've got anterior tilt, posterior tilt, that should be definitely hard enough, 5 to 10 of those if you're getting that exercise right. Now you should be feeling it between the shoulder blades and then also at your core, quite deep in your core. So what we're trying to do here is activate your transverse abdominis, which is the abdominal muscle that kind of circles your spine, and this provides stability. So some of the problems in our culture is that when people have this rounded shoulder kind of posture, you get kind of a switching off of this transverse abdominis, and you have the external obliques, which kind of run crisscrossing your body like this, and your rectus abdominis does all the stabilizing, and that's what we don't want. Those muscles are there to create the movements. So the obliques, they're kind of the twisting, bending movements to the side, and the thoracic rotation, and then the rectus abdominis is to flex the spine. So they're movement muscles, but the transverse abdominis, that's the one that we want to activate for stability. And that will make a big difference with your movement and also your balance as well. This is an area that very few people activate very well. It's kind of with the transverse abdominis and the glutes seem to be switched off in a lot of people, and we need to switch them back on again. So that's the easy version of the exercise. I'll also show you the harder version of the exercise. So this one, it's the same thing, this time with the shoulders up, and you want to get the palms up. So the palms facing forwards and the back of the hand against the wall. You might find that one arm doesn't want to do this so much as the other, so I can get my right arm quite flat against the wall like this. My left arm, it feels like it's a bit more of a struggle. So into this position, your shoulders are already back, you can't get them back much further than this, and then we're going to breathe deeply again, and then flatten the lower spine against the wall by posteriorly tilting. And then just breathe from there. And then 5 deep breaths again. Okay, yeah, 5 deep breaths, more than enough. That's a hard exercise. Now, if you can do the second version, do the second version, but it's likely that you won't be able to do that effectively because if you are feeling pain in any other areas, so if your arms are up like this and you're feeling pain around the shoulder here, do this one. But this one kind of just stops you from cheating, really, because in this position it's very difficult to cheat by moving your shoulders off the wall. Here, what I notice with a lot of people is I'll get them with their shoulder blades back, big deep breath, and then what will happen as soon as they try to flatten their lower back by posteriorly tilting, they'll push their shoulders off the wall, and they maybe won't even realise that they're doing it. But that's something to watch out for. So that's kind of wall breathing 1 and 2. The second one is the more advanced exercise, so only if you can do it. Okay, the next exercise is a beginner exercise that you can do called the quad pad. So this is going to practice finding that neutral spine by also practicing your anterior tilt of the pelvis and your posterior tilt of the pelvis. So what does that mean? So an anterior tilt would look like this. So if you look at my lower spine area, that's an anterior tilt of the pelvis, and that's a posterior tilt of the pelvis. So anterior, posterior, anterior, posterior. Okay, so to do this exercise, again, we use the same 3 cues. These will come up in many of the exercises to help you find a neutral spine. So the first cue is, again, shoulder blades squeeze back, almost as far as you can. And then the second cue, big deep breath through your chest. And then the third cue is a posterior tilt of the pelvis, so posterior tilt. Now the trick with this exercise is to keep your shoulder blades squeezed back, and then it should be hard. So again, my voice is starting to wobble. This is a difficult exercise to do. I'm feeling a lot of engagement between my shoulder blades and deep in my core as well. Again, you might want to just hold this for about 30 seconds. You could maybe go up to a minute on this one, but no longer than that. And if you're feeling any pain other than between the shoulder blades and kind of deep in the core here, just stop, reset, fiddle around, and do it again. So again, I'm going to take you through that one more time. So squeeze the shoulder blades back. Big deep breath. Don't move your shoulder blades at all. You'll be in an anterior tilted position right now, and then you're going to posterior tilt and hold. And you can breathe through your chest as you do this, and that's a hard exercise. You roughly want to have 90 degrees going on here and 90 degrees going on here. So you wouldn't expect that to be a hard position to hold, but I can assure you if you get it right, that is difficult. So that's a nice beginner's exercise. You can also practice the anterior tilt, posterior tilt here. It's a good way to practice. Look in the mirror and see if you can do it, because what I tend to find here is 2 issues with people. Their range of their shoulder blades, their retraction of their shoulder blades is not very much, and even if they've got this retraction going on, they sometimes find it difficult to get this range with the pelvic tilts. So that's something to practice. If you don't have much range in your pelvic tilt, then you need to get on with the myofascial release. So with the balls all around the hip area, like in some of my other videos, and that will help you create that range, because at the moment it's like your fascia is all kind of, there's too many adhesions, it's all gumped up, and it's just fixing your hips in this position, so you might find that you've got very limited range around here. So that's why I advocate doing the myofascial release, the self-massage. That's why it's so important. Okay, we start to get a little bit more advanced now in the exercises. This is quite a strong, this will create quite a strong pull between your shoulder blades, and it's a strong core exercise as well. We should really activate that transverse abdominis area. So this is called a prone Cobra. You might have heard of this exercise before, but this will be done a little bit differently. If you do it right, this should feel very, very difficult. you won't be able to hold it for much longer than 30 seconds, if that. So we're going to go flat on our stomach for this one. Put your arms out, again about 90 degrees everywhere, so 90 degrees at the shoulder, 90 degrees at the elbow. So face down. We're going to do the same 3 cues as usual. But this time I'm going to do a cue first. So the first cue is to drive your knees into the ground like that. That'll stick your butt up in the air. And then you're going to squeeze the shoulder blades back and then push with your hands to get your shoulder blades squeezed. So if you notice, my lower back is very curved right now. So a big deep breath through your chest. And then posteriorly tilt and keep pushing up with your hands. And posteriorly tilting at the same time. Try to keep breathing. Your lower chest should still be on the mat. Your upper chest should be a little off the mat. And if you're pushing with your arms and you're posteriorly tilting at the same time, squeezing your shoulder blades together, it should be a very, very hard exercise to do. Again, try not to pull up with your neck too much, you're just pushing with your arms. And you're kind of working against your own little inhibitions there with your tight hips and your tight shoulders. So that's a very hard exercise to do. So a normal prone cobra might just look like this. What I'm trying to do is get rid of that curve in your lower back. Now if you create it with the knee drive and then the push up here, you won't eradicate it completely by posteriorly tilting your pelvis, but you'll begin to, and it will certainly be a shallower curve in your lower back. And then just hold that. 30 seconds max, really. You'll feel it. If you're doing it properly, in much less than that time. So that exercise is the prone cobra. It's a good exercise to do. It ramps things up a little bit. This should be a much stronger feeling of tension between the shoulder blades, particularly. Okay, right, the next exercise, and a very advanced postural exercise, is a plank. Now, a plank is an exercise that most people will have done at some point, and maybe you don't think it's a very advanced exercise, but I can assure you that it is, and most people can't do it, I would say, optimally. Obviously, people can do the plank, and you'll see some benefit of it. It will activate some muscles in your core, but I want to do the plank to encourage good posture, and to do that it will actually be a much more effective core exercise at the same time. So I'll show you how it works, and I'll show you with a stick to illustrate the difference. So all you need to do is a plank on your knees. Now you hear these stories of people being able to hold the plank for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I think some guy even held it for like 24 hours the other day. But I guarantee you're not holding it in the optimal position if you can hold it for that long, and I'll show you why. So I want you to get on your knees and on your elbows to begin with, and I'll just show you by putting this stick on my back. So knees and elbows, again you want roughly 90 degrees here at the shoulder. So I'm going to put this on my back. This can be quite tricky to do on your own, so bear with me. So we're in this kind of position here. So our knees and elbows here. What's going on at the moment is I'm sure that there is a little gap. I'll try and do it without this, but there's a gap at my lower back. I can get my fingers underneath there. So what I'm going to try and do, because this position is pretty easy for me at the moment, I can hold this probably all day. So what I'm going to do is go through those 3 cues that I keep on talking about. So squeeze the shoulder blades back. Big deep breath. Right now I've got that gap in my lower spine, so I want to get rid of it. Like that. So squeeze your shoulder blades back. I've got rid of that now. And now that stick is sitting flat on my back. And it's a very hard exercise to do from here. And yeah, I'm struggling with it. And so this is what I want you to practice trying to do. So I'm just going to give myself a break there. So now you can see how subtle that is. So now I've given myself a break. I'm not in that position. It's not difficult at all. And then all of a sudden, I squeeze the shoulder blades back, posteriorly tilt the pelvis, and it's incredibly hard again in this position. Okay, so I'm going to give myself a break. So what I tend to see with people happening here is if they can do that shoulder retraction, what happens when they try and tilt their pelvis is that they'll round here and the stick will come off the top of their head and also their shoulders. So we need to do both, and you won't be able to do it, I'm guessing, the first time you do it, unless you've got very good body awareness. But if we can do both, get that position, you can see me shaking as I find the perfect neutral spine. Okay, so that takes practice to be able to do well. And again, you need to just fiddle around, play around with these exercises. As you can see, that's actually quite hard work. We would know that doing a plank just on your knees would be such hard work. But the reason it is hard work, if you think about it, what are we doing? So, my posture, I have vaguely the same problem as everybody else. Yeah, I have slightly rounded shoulders and I have this slight curve in my lower back. It's the same problem as most people, but the degree to which I have this problem now is less, simply because I've practiced it a lot. I also have never really done a job where I've hunched over a desk all day, so I haven't had an extreme of this problem, but I did have it much worse than I have now. So if you have these rounded shoulders, squeezing your shoulder blades back means that you're fighting against it. So you're having to create some tension and to contract the muscles here between your shoulder blades to get rid of this. So already just doing this is harder work than just relaxing like that. So again, most people plank in the position that they're comfortable with. So if you see yourself planking like this, for example, you're rounded the shoulders, so you're not working against that. So you're working against it up here. And then when you posteriorly tilt your pelvis, so if you're comfortable in this position with your lower back, and you've got the curve, if you posteriorly tilt your pelvis, you're working against your tight hip flexors. So your tight hip flexors want to pull you this way, your shoulders want to pull you this way, and you're pulling against your shoulders and against your tight hip flexors as well. So all of a sudden, an exercise that is based around the force of gravity pushing down on your back like this, and that's what's creating the tension in your abs. Now you've got that force of gravity going down, so you've still got that area that's causing the exercise to be somewhat tough. But now you're working against your shoulders and against your hip flexors. So you're working against two areas of your body mainly, and that's going to make the exercise a lot harder. So your own body is the resistance in this exercise, which makes it such a difficult exercise to carry out properly, because you obviously are going to be limited in the range and the control here, and it's something that you've just got to get used to doing. So if I demonstrate this with the tennis ball, for example, now if any of you ever throw, if you play cricket or whatever, I'm sure some of you can throw to some extent, but you always do it with your right side. And why do you do it with your right side? Is because you're just used to it. You're used to throwing with your right arm. Now if you throw it with your left arm, it's going to feel very, very weird, and you just won't be able to do it with the same efficacy. So this is kind of the same thing. So your postural position at the moment is like throwing with your right arm. So this is what you got used to. You're very used to holding yourself in this position. So correcting it is going to feel like throwing with your left arm. It's going to feel clumsy. You're not going to be able to, I almost guarantee that you won't be able to get you don't have to do it with a stick, but if you look in the mirror, you won't be able to flatten out your lower back so this stick is lying flat on your lower back. It's going to be very difficult to do that. I've done this with a lot of clients, and no one really gets it first time. So give that a go and practice. It's not going to be a simple road to correcting your posture or even stopping it deteriorating, but it has to be done. Because what's your alternative? Your alternative is years of pain as you get older. Oh, that's great. Well, we don't want that. So a little bit of hard work is what's required. If it was easy, then no one would have postural problems, would they? So that's the plank. Try it out. Try and be as accurate as you can with it. Okay, so the next exercise is going to be a standing bridge. So what we're going to practice here is the adjusting the tilt of your pelvis to keep a neutral spine as you're bending over, as you're hinging to be precise. So hinge is quite an important aspect of your movement. It's what tends to happen as you set up for a sprint or when you jump. So for example, as you set up for a sprint, you're going to be in this position. You notice how I've hinged, loaded the glute here, ready to push myself forward, or if I jump, for example, I won't jump because I'm going to smack my head on this thing, but you start here and then you jump from there. Notice that you wouldn't go all the way down to do this, you would just stop about here, so we don't have a big knee bend when we're loading the glutes or when we're hinging. So, but this hinge often happens, it's a very important part of your movement, of your explosive movement in particular. So when we're standing up, the tendency for most people, like I've already explained, is to be in this anterior tilt position in the lower back. So I'm telling you to posteriorly tilt out of that while keeping your shoulder blades back so we can get a neutral spine. Now as you bend over, you actually tend to do the opposite. So as we bend over, we tend to posteriorly tilt. So as we bend, we need to anterior tilt to maintain a neutral spine. So that's what this is practicing. Again, it will involve the same core aspects. So we're going to start in our normal postural position, squeeze the shoulder blades back, big deep breath, posterior tilt the pelvis, so we're in a neutral spine standing up. And then as we go down, you have to adjust. And we're maybe only going to go to about there. So right now I've changed the tilt of my pelvis a little bit, so it's trying to neutralize the spine a little bit more. You maybe know you need to go to about there. And just try and adjust so you're neutral. This always helps that you're doing it against a mirror. So I don't have a mirror here, so I'm hoping that my spine's in a pretty good position. And then just hold this position. And if you get it just right, you should start to feel some engagement of the glute here, but that might take a while. Finding engagement of the glutes is not an easy thing to do. And then we're just going to move back up. And you might want to hold the position for about 10 seconds, move up, and you might want to do about 5 of those to practice that movement. So the whole purpose of this exercise is to kind of remind your body what it was like to move explosively. Yeah? So loading the glutes is what we need to do in explosive movements. Now as you get older and you become inactive, I mean, how many times in your life are you really going to load glutes so that you can explode into a jump or a sprint? It's not really going to happen, and you might not think it's relevant to you. But if we can kind of remind your body how to do it, even if you never do it again in your entire life, it's going to have profound effects on your posture, because if you can at least potentially move explosively and move the way you should have done, should be doing, evolutionarily speaking, will have better effects on your posture, will actually help your posture. So I'm trying to remind your body of how things used to be when you were younger, or how you've evolved to be without the pressures of modern day life affecting your posture in a negative way. So this is the relevance behind it. Again, you may never do a long jump or a high jump or a sprint for the rest of your life, but reminding your body exactly the best way to do it, it's going to help you in your posture and your movement more generally. Right up against the wall. Okay, the next exercise is the unilateral position. So we would have practiced the standing bridge, which sets the loading of the glutes. So if you think kind of this glute loading position, so we're slightly hinged over like this, that's where I want you to be, because I'm going to show you this exercise from front on, but we're going to have that slight load when we do it. So we're going to have 1 foot forward, one foot back, about a stride's length back, just a normal walking stride length back, and your legs should be hip width apart. So hip width apart is really important. If you do this and you feel like you're kind of wobbling or falling over to one side, it means you're too straight with your feet and you need to be more hip width apart. So this is quite a complicated position, and it's a difficult position that I've found for many of my clients to get into, so this might require some practice. So watch the video closely and I'll try to explain everything as clearly as I can, and just practice it in the mirror again if you've got one in front of you. Alright, so again, the first thing we're going to do is get that good postural position, so shoulder blades back, big deep breath through the pelvis, posteriorly tilt, and then we're going to just hinge slightly. So when we hinge slightly, I want you to make sure that everything's pointing nicely forward, so we don't have a knee pointing inwards or outwards, or the foot pointing outwards like this, so it should all be facing front on, hip width apart. So we're into this position, and then I want you to bring this back foot so that the knees are together here. So the knees are roughly together. So if I show you from the side, and I'll show you from this way, that knee's going to come so it's level with the other knee. So we'll go into that position again. So we're level. Now slight bend, load that glute. Most of the weight on the front leg. And then we're going to pull back with your foot. It's like you're going to pull back on the mat, but your foot doesn't go anywhere. So you're just pulling back. And then we're going to come forward with this leg at the same time. 90% of your weight should be on this front leg. Okay, just hold that position. Okay. If you get it just right, you should feel it in your glute quite strongly, like I am now. It's really firing up my glute right now. But again, this might take some time to get this position right. Now, if you are in front of the mirror, just watch what's going on in your knees here. So as you know, getting this position, the shoulder blades back, posteriorly tilted, it might be that your knee starts to point in or out. Just try and straighten out. And the more you get things aligned, the more likely you're going to switch on your glute here. So the unilateral position is an important position to get into simply because it's the starting point for your gait cycle. Yeah, so we don't hop around like kangaroos with both feet like this. We obviously stride forward, and a stride forward looks like that. So you finish in this kind of unilateral position. So we're going to take the foot forward, and we're going to go to there, shift the weight onto the front foot, and then we go into the next stride, we shift the weight into this foot. And it's always hip width apart, we're not going across ourselves, walking on a line. So that's the unilateral position, difficult position to get this one. Do remember to get yourself into that good postural position before you start. Slight hinge, and then get into that position. And just make sure that most of the weight is on that front foot. It might take quite a while. It took me quite a while to get good glute engagement, particularly on my right leg. Happened fairly quickly on my left, but on my right it took quite a long time. So again, fiddle around with it and try and follow the video as closely as you can. Okay, for these, the next two exercises, we're going to need the wall. So the first one is going to be the hip flexor integrated stretch. So it's really important when you ever do any stretches that they're integrated. So this means you're in a good postural position and you're creating the connections between the muscles and fascia like you would be moving in real life. So when you're walking or running, and especially if you're sprinting, you've got a kind of an optimal relationship going on between the muscles. You've got so some muscles are lengthening and eccentrically loading, and then some muscles are contracting, and then they swap around and they work in a relationship with each other. Now, when you stretch passively, that is, if you're just stretching kind of in a more traditional fashion, you're not building these relationships. You're stretching one area and the other area is switched off or not activated. Now that's not optimal. So what we want to do is create an optimal integrated stretch where everything is connected, and usually integrated stretches involve basically an exercise. So, for example, a sprint is a great integrated stretch. If you're sprinting with the correct form, it's an integrated stretch in itself. And that's what we're going to try and mimic with this exercise. So this is a hip flexor integrated stretch. So I'll do it from side on. So a bit like the unilateral position and some of the others, we're going to get hip width apart, and then we're going to squeeze the shoulder blades back as usual. Big deep breath, posteriorly tilt the pelvis, and you'll get a big stretch here in your hip flexor. You might get it high up like me, or you might get it further down. And then you're going to pull back on that front leg at the same time. So pull back at the front leg, that should activate the glute on this side. And then if you're squeezing your shoulder blades back, posteriorly tilting your pelvis, maybe also looking up towards the ceiling, you will get the stretch here. So you're going to get the stretch in the hip flexor, the contraction of the glute. And that will give you an optimal integrated stretch. And if you're doing everything that you should do with your upper body posture, it will definitely feel like an exercise. 30 seconds is all you need to do. So that one both sides. Again, if you can, do it in the mirror, looking up in the mirror. That's absolutely ideal because you can make sure that everything's pointing dead straight from front on as well. So that's the integrated stretch. One more. Okay, the next exercise is going to be the wall squat. Now, if there is ever an exercise that may get you lighting up your glutes for the first time in a long time, it's going to be this one. This also stretches your glutes at the same time. So it's an exercise for your glutes and it's a stretch for your glutes. And so it's a good rule of thumb. If a stretch doesn't feel like an exercise, it's not an integrated stretch, and it's not very likely to be helping you that much. So we're going to start by getting as close to the wall as you can, sitting next to the wall like that. Then we're going to spin around, and so I can do this with my butt right up against the wall, but some of you might not be able to get this close to the wall. And so we're going to put our feet up against the wall. I want the shin here to be flat, and so you're just going to push against the wall. And if you push against the wall, you'll go up like this. So this, right now, your pelvis is posteriorly tilted, like this. And so what I want you to do is bring it into an anterior tilt, so that your butt here, kind of your tailbone here, is drifting just above the mat, just floating just above the mat. So this is what it'll look like. So we're going to anteriorly tilt the pelvis. By anteriorly tilting the pelvis, you're going to naturally push against the wall, so you don't need to create any push other than what's happening with your anterior tilt. Take a big deep breath to encourage that anterior tilt even further, and just let that go lower towards the mat. Again, you're trying to point your tailbone into the mat like that. So it's not just a question of lowering your butt above the mat, you're also trying to tilt your pelvis, so you're pointing your tailbone towards the mat. That's creating a nice stretch and also a contraction at the same time. So it's really lighting up the glutes. So this time we're actually practicing rather the opposite kind of tilt. So we've been doing a lot of posterior tilting of the pelvis to get a neutral spine standing up. Now we're anterior tilting the pelvis to get a neutral spine in this deep squat position. Okay, you can hold that for up to a minute. This one a little bit longer. So it's really obviously very important to start engaging the glutes. The glutes are largely switched off because of your postural issues. So if we can engage them again, we can start encouraging your posture to kind of sort itself out a little bit and stretch them. Now, what you might find in this position is it might cause, particularly if you have tight hips, so my hips were particularly tight from playing years of squash, and this caused me a lot of discomfort around the hip region, both on the outside and the inside, this exercise. It's worth persevering with unless the pain is getting too unbearable, because what we're getting here is if you've got restrictions in your inner thigh muscles and also in like your gluteus medius area, around here. It's going to show it up a little bit, and but this is a great exercise to do to get that activation of the glutes. So try and put up with it a little bit. If it gets very painful around your hip area here, either on the inside or on the outside of the hip, you might want to go a little bit easy on this exercise to begin with. But it's, I don't find that this hurts many people, to be honest. This used to hurt me more than most others, and I think it was because of my years playing squash. But yeah, give that one a go. You might feel that your glutes lining up for the first time in a long time.